Season 2 opens following Sukbong's death, where Sergeant Park is pressured to take responsibility for the DP team's failure. Sergeant Park is asked to sign a document stating that Sukbong's suicide was due to mental illness, covering up the real reason behind his death. Sergeant Park recalls his own experiences with hazing and systemic abuse from his superiors. Outside, Captain Lim urges him to keep Sukbong's case quiet and sign the papers without making trouble. Captain Lim also wonders about the current whereabouts of Jun Ho and Han. 413 days remain before Jun Ho's discharge when Captain Yang calls him back to the military base. Jun Ho's superiors continue bullying him, showing that despite multiple deaths from bullying, nothing has truly changed. Jun Ho is then asked to lead the DP team in Han's absence, as Han is once again hospitalized. Although Jun Ho hesitates because he hasn't reached corporal rank yet, Captain Yang insists that Jun Ho take Se Wong under his wing. As Jun Ho begins missions to locate deserters, he realizes that Se Wong doesn't respect the role. Se Wong is more interested in the freedom the job provides than its actual responsibilities. Jun Ho is shocked by Se Wong's disregard for the seriousness of pursuing deserters. Se Wong even expresses that catching deserters is too dangerous for him to risk his life. Overhearing Se Wong's phone conversation, Jun Ho realizes that Se Wong is badmouthing him, calling him naive. The senior soldiers then target Ji Yong, accusing him of using the DP team as a shield. Jun Ho witnesses the seniors assaulting Ji Yong, which reminds him of Sukbong's struggles. Jun Ho steps outside and confronts the seniors. The soldiers are angered by Jun Ho's defiance and hit him, but Jun Ho fights back, warning them to stop bullying the juniors. Meanwhile, Sergeant Park is being pressured to sign the document, but just as he is about to sign, alarms go off at the base camp. It is soon revealed that Kim Ruri, Sukbong's friend, has retaliated against his seniors by shooting them after enduring their bullying. Having completed his punishment for attacking his seniors, Jun Ho returns to his dorm, where he encounters Se Wong. Se Wong apologizes to Jun Ho for belittling the work of the DP team. At that moment, Ji Yong arrives and informs them that Ruri has deserted the base camp and fled with a weapon. Ji Yong warns him to be cautious around Ruri. Jun Ho is further surprised to see Sergeant Park back in his office. He finds out that Se Wong has refused to join the mission to find Ruri, and learns that Han will be joining him on the next mission. Han, still in the hospital and unable to speak due to the trauma involving Sukbong, watches the news in shock as he hears about Ruri, Sukbong's friend, who has now gone rogue. He remembers the time when he stood up for Ruri, saving him from seniors who had been bullying him. Meanwhile, Jun Ho attends a press conference with Captain Lim and Sergeant Park, where Lieutenant Colonel Soan addresses the media about a soldier who has gone rogue after attacking his roommates. During the briefing, Soan provides personal details about Ruri, including his photo and address, exposing him publicly. She also reveals disturbing images from the crime scene, likely to stir public outrage, and warns that Ruri is armed and a danger to society. Afterward, Sergeant Park reminds Jun Ho that it's up to him to make sure they reach Ruri first. Jun Ho later observes a scene where the mother of Ruri's victim confronts Ruri's own mother, lashing out when she hears her defending Ruri by explaining he was a victim of bullying. The police attempt to protect her from the hostile crowd. Han also arrives at the scene, but Jun Ho is shocked to see that Han has been so traumatized that he's rendered speechless. Back at the military base, Captain Lim bursts into a room where Soan and Officer Min are having a private discussion, with Sergeant Park following him. There, we learn about Captain Lim's connection with Soan. They are ex-spouses, sharing joint custody of their children. Soan quickly puts Captain Lim in his place, reminding him of her rank. She turns to Sergeant Park and claims that Ruri was a high-risk candidate due to his strong interest in violent video games. Ruri reaches out to the media, sharing his side of the story and revealing the bullying he faced in the military. His mother, after seeing her son in visible pain, faints and later pleads with Jun Ho and Han to bring him back safely. Meanwhile, Sergeant Park and Captain Lim decide to follow Officer Min into his office, trying to access his computer to gather information. However, Officer Min catches them in the act, retaliating by beating them up. He confiscates their phones and wallets before locking them inside. During a meeting, So-eun stops the soldiers from revealing to the media that Ruri is unarmed. She insists it's crucial to maintain the story that Ruri poses a societal threat. Midway through, So-eun receives a call from her daughter, who mentions that dad needs So-eun to help him. So-eun then arrives at Officer Min's office to release Captain Lim, where she advises them to stop pursuing Ruri, expressing her confidence that he'll surrender soon. Meanwhile, Ruri, watching from a supermarket, sees the public attacking his mother, filling him with rage. So-eun predicts that Ruri would go searching for his mother to ensure her safety. Sergeant Park challenges So-eun's portrayal of Ruri, saying he wasn't the monster she's made him out to be. Ignoring them, So-eun leaves them locked in the office. However, on her drive to Ruri's house, So-eun begins to reconsider her decision to order Ruri's death on sight. As military officers close in on Ruri's mother's restaurant, Han starts having a panic attack due to the intense atmosphere. Jun Ho encourages him to calm down and rest. Soon after, Ruri appears and threatens to detonate a bomb. While Ruri's mother is escorted outside, he holds a soldier hostage. Surrounded by soldiers with guns raised, Ruri is ordered to drop his weapon. So-eun contemplates whether to allow the soldiers to kill him or wait for Captain Lim and Sergeant Park to handle the situation. Jun Ho tries to reason with Ruri, but this only aggravates him further. Han, struggling to keep calm, receives a call from Sergeant Park, who urges him to stall the situation until they arrive. Summoning courage, Han steps forward and begins a live stream. He reassures Ruri, on camera, that no one will harm him, urging him to stay calm. Jun Ho intervenes when soldiers attempt to shut off Han's stream, and So-eun eventually decides against shooting Ruri, aware that the unfolding scene is being broadcast to a large audience. However, the military quickly cuts off the internet connection, abruptly stopping Han's live stream. Feeling cornered, Ruri sees the snipers aimed at him while Jun Ho and Han are restrained from intervening. Just as So-eun prepares to give the order to shoot, Ruri's mother arrives and approaches her son. She persuades him not to trigger the bomb, and Ruri breaks down in her arms. General Gu then assures that Ruri will receive a fair trial for his actions. Later, General Gu confronts Officer Min, furious that Ruri was allowed to survive the encounter. He feels that the situation has spiraled out of control, with the public demanding accountability for the incident. In a surprising twist, we see that Sukbong is somehow still alive. In a flashback, a soldier named Songmin is shown back when he was a student in performing arts. At the time, Songmin was beaten up by a senior after expressing his wish to play a female character in one of their plays. The senior, disapproving of Songmin's choice, tells him he'll learn his lesson once he joins the military, a reality that seems closer as his enlistment letter arrives. In the present day, Jun Ho and Han are awarded for helping Ruri come out of the incident safely. Sergeant Park, however, doubts the true value of the merit award, believing it only exposes the harsh bullying practices in the military to the public. Han wonders aloud if they'll be allowed to take a break due to their award. Instead, Sergeant Park assigns them a new mission, to track down one of the military's 3 most notorious deserters, Songmin. Hearing Songmin's name, Han is taken aback, triggering a flashback of a previous mission he undertook with Sungwoo, where he had first encountered Songmin. In that memory, Songmin had been performing as a drag queen at a club. Military life had been extremely hard on Songmin. Han tries to persuade Songmin to return to the military, but Songmin, paralyzed with fear, retaliates by attacking Han, stabbing him with a knife before fleeing the scene. In the present, Han and Jun Ho return to the same club in search of Songmin, only to find out that he has disappeared following the stabbing incident. They reach out to the police for help and are directed to a private detective. Meanwhile, Captain Lim, Sergeant Park, and Ji-young discuss the 3 most elusive deserters who remain at large. Besides Songmin, there is a man who has been on the run for the last 8 years, and another who has been missing since the Korean War. When Jun Ho and Han meet the so-called private detective, he claims to have information on Songmin's whereabouts, but they soon realize he is associated with a group of gangsters. The gang tries to attack Jun Ho and Han, but just in time, the police step in to defend them. The detective attempts to escape on a bicycle, and Jun Ho quickly follows, grabbing a bicycle of his own in a comedic chase. Despite his best efforts, the detective manages to outrun Jun Ho, until Han joins the pursuit, taking off in an electric ice cream cart. The man eventually ends up inside a restaurant, exhausted and stopping to grab some water. But the two soldiers manage to catch up with him there. He's taken to the police and, after some time, gives up information about Songmin. He explains that Songmin had started going by the name Nina and wanted to live anonymously after stabbing the soldier. Jun Ho and Han follow Songmin's trail and discover that he's struggling to make ends meet, holding down two jobs. By day, he works in a factory, and by night, he performs at a bar, singing under the name Nina, a female identity he embraces. Songmin finds it increasingly difficult to live this double life until he's noticed by a well-known director who offers him an opportunity. She invites him to London. Jun Ho and Han also discover that Songmin sought help from the infamous deserter who had managed to avoid capture since the Korean War. To approach him, the two soldiers pretend to be deserters themselves and show up at the man's hideout. The man, who has experienced hardship in the military himself, sympathizes with them. However, the situation quickly escalates when someone leaks the truth, that Jun Ho and Han are undercover soldiers. The two escape, and Jun Ho accidentally finds himself inside the club where Songmin once performed. There, he's surprised to see Young. Jun Ho catches up with her and learns that Songmin is on his way to London. Young expresses her hope that he can escape after everything he's endured. Before parting, Young offers to share one meal with Jun Ho for old time's sake, but Jun Ho bids her farewell. Reuniting with Han, the two head to the international airport, hoping to catch Songmin. From the airport staff, they learn that Songmin's fake passport was detected by the system, and he was asked to step aside for questioning. In panic, Songmin attempted to flee the airport but ended up tripping and injuring himself, sustaining a bleeding head wound. Despite the injury, Nina managed to run out of the airport. Han decides to follow the path Songmin likely took. Eventually, the two soldiers reach a highway, where they find Songmin's body. It's revealed that Songmin succumbed to excessive blood loss from his injury. The two soldiers are left contemplating their own lives and purpose, wondering if they could ever pursue their passions as relentlessly as Songmin did. Jun Ho is curious about the seriousness of the military's power, and questions the casual approach of giving such a deadly weapon to young soldiers. Meanwhile, Soan meets Captain Lim before she leaves the base camp, handing him a USB drive containing confidential data. She explains that she lost her job for refusing to order Ruri's death, but she emphasizes that Captain Lim should access the information on the encrypted drive. Later that day, Sergeant Park and Captain Lim meet General Gu at a broadcasting station after his interview. General Gu tells them about a GP, guard post, staff sergeant named Na Jong-sok, a man who once saved a fellow soldier from a landmine. General Gu and Officer Min then request that Sergeant Park and Captain Lim reinvestigate Sergeant Na's death. This case appears to be personal for Captain Lim. His superiors soon contact Sergeant Park, urging him to follow General Gu's orders. Sergeant Park, sensing something deeper, asks Captain Lim about Na Jong-sok. Captain Lim explains that Na was a very close friend. Captain Lim recalls that Jong-sok had called him the night before his death, sounding worried about his life. Jong-sok had tried to open up but hesitated, and instead of pursuing the matter, Captain Lim had ended the call. Now, he believes that his friend's death involves a more complex story. Determined, Captain Lim takes Jun Ho along to reinvestigate the circumstances of Jong-sok's death. As they travel to the guard post, Captain Lim warns Jun Ho that questioning the soldiers stationed there would be challenging, as they were located close to North Korea and had witnessed significant events. Upon arriving at the guard post, they meet the GP commander. Commander Ho gives them a tour of the area, mentioning how North Korean soldiers frequently spy on them from across the fence. Captain Lim asks to visit the site of Jong-sok's death and learns that it is located near the North Korean border. A flashback then reveals the events on the night of Jong-sok's death. Jong-sok had been helping a soldier named Ahi, who had accidentally stepped on a landmine. Although Jong-sok managed to cut the wire, the mine still detonated. In the present day, Captain Lim meets Ahi, trying to get a statement from him, but Ahi remains silent, refusing to discuss the events of that night. Later that night, Jun Ho and Captain Lim discuss how the GP unit seemed eager to close Jong Sok's case quickly, hinting at a possible cover-up. As they talk, Commander Ho arrives at their room, bringing a candle after the power unexpectedly goes out. He explains that such power outages and loud noises are common occurrences at the GP, adding stories of South Korean and North Korean soldiers attacking each other. Captain Lim, however, warns Commander Ho not to try diverting them with these tales, firmly stating his commitment to uncovering the truth about Jong Sok's death. Meanwhile, Han returns to an empty apartment for his last holiday before discharge. At the base, Sergeant Park informs Jun Ho that Jong Sok and Ah-hee had both been suspiciously transferred due to refusing to follow orders. Jun Ho later asks Ah-hee why he never got along with Jong Sok when he was still alive. Ah-hee states that the incident left him too traumatized to recount repeatedly, mentioning the deep impact of witnessing someone die in front of him. However, Captain Lim accuses Ah-hee of bullying Jong Sok and even suggests that he forced his superior onto the landmine to kill him, a claim Ah-hee dismisses with a scoff. Captain Lim, however, warns Ah-hee, vowing to make him pay for his friend's death. Meanwhile, Officer Min confides in Sergeant Park, revealing that the real purpose of sending Captain Lim and Jun Ho to the GP was to trap Captain Lim. He hands Sergeant Park a toy to keep, but Sergeant Park grows concerned for Captain Lim and calls Han, urging him to go to the GP to prevent Captain Lim and Jun Ho from falling into the trap. Captain Lim remains convinced that Ah-hee bullied his friend and that the GP soldiers are helping cover it up. Overcome with rage, Captain Lim begins beating Ah-hee, who reacts indifferently, taking the blows without resistance. In the scuffle, the room accidentally catches fire, and Ah-hee faints, seemingly reliving the traumatic fire incident. Han, Jun Ho, and Sergeant Park arrive and quickly notice that security cameras had been recording Captain Lim's attack on Ah-hee. Sergeant Park then shares the truth about Jong Sok, explaining that Jong Sok had been the actual bully, known for hazing his juniors. During one such incident near the border, Jong Sok had accidentally stepped on a landmine, resulting in his death and leaving Ah-hee traumatized. Following the accident, the GP team decided to cover it up to protect Ah-hee. The news of Captain Lim's assault on Ah-hee during the reinvestigation spreads quickly, shocking him. General Gu reaches out to Captain Lim, questioning his feelings now that he knows the truth about his friend's death. He asks Captain Lim whether he will make the right choice this time, hinting that if Jong Sok's behavior becomes public, his family might lose their compensation, which was given under the assumption of his martyrdom. At the same time, Officer Min reveals that Sergeant Park was also set up. The toy box he received was actually filled with money, framing him for bribery and a biased reinvestigation. Officer Min demands that Sergeant Park turn over the USB drive So-eun gave to Captain Lim. Han then asks Jun Ho to retrieve the USB drive from the repair shop, warning him not to open the files on it. So-eun speaks with Ruri about her intention to represent him in his case. She reveals that she has recently started her own practice and wants to help him through this. However, Ruri feels he doesn't need a lawyer, as he's ready to accept the consequences for the harm he caused to the soldiers. Despite his reluctance, So-eun persuades Ruri to let her represent him in court. While waiting at the shop, Jun Ho sees a news broadcast featuring Hae-yeon, the sister of Woo-suk, the first deserter who had taken his life with Jun Ho's lighter. Hae-yeon now works with the Human Rights Center, advocating for the rights of innocent soldiers. Jun Ho remembers Hae-yeon confronting him and asking what he had done to help her brother when he was being bullied. In the present day, Jun Ho requests access to files on a USB drive, discovering it holds a trove of confidential military information. Among the unlocked files are details about Ruri's attack, revealing that one of the soldiers had still been alive after being shot. As he reads further, Jun Ho finds a report describing the soldier's death, which states that he lost his life due to delays in being taken to the hospital. Realizing the potential impact, Jun Ho understands that the data on this USB drive could expose the military leadership and potentially incite a public outcry. General Gu then makes a public statement regarding the status of Ruri's victims, addressing reporters and the victims' families. In a bold move, So-eun questions General Gu about a supposed rescue operation, but he claims that all the deceased had died instantly on the scene. Hae-yeon attempts to press General Gu with more questions, though he avoids them, insisting he needs to see the final report first. Afterward, Soan has a private talk with Hae-yeon, advising her to remain cautious of General Gu and other influential figures connected to the case. The two women discuss the risks of challenging such powerful forces, ultimately deciding to support each other whenever possible. Around this time, Jun Ho calls Hae-yeon, sharing the painful news that Beam had died because he wasn't brought to the hospital in time. He asks Hae-yeon to meet him in person. Meanwhile, Sergeant Park instructs Ji-young to investigate Jun Ho's whereabouts, as he has not yet returned with the USB drive. In a surprising turn, Han, who has completed his enlistment term, decides to withdraw his discharge, pleading with Sergeant Park to send him on one final mission, to track down the deserter, Jun Ho. Together, Sergeant Park and Han visit Jun Ho's home, where they meet his mother. She gives them a note from Jun Ho, in which he assures her that he will be back home soon. Meanwhile, Jun Ho's father leaks information about his son to Officer Min, revealing that Jun Ho has a USB drive containing classified information. At the same time, Han and Sergeant Park try to put themselves in Jun Ho's shoes, wondering about his next move, until Jun Ho himself calls Han. During the call, Jun Ho expresses that he feels a responsibility to correct the wrongs within the system and promises to return once he completes this mission. As the DP team works to track him down, Ji-young receives a lead, informing them that Jun Ho is on a train. Pressuring Ji-young, General Gu forces him to reveal Jun Ho's location, then orders Officer Min to deploy a team of soldiers to intercept Jun Ho. These soldiers are given orders to capture him, dead or alive. As Jun Ho boards the train to meet Hae-yeon, he realizes he's being followed. Officer Min dispatches more than 30 soldiers, instructing them to board the train and capture Jun Ho. Meanwhile, Han and Sergeant Park find themselves stuck in traffic, unable to reach Jun Ho in time. On the train, Jun Ho recalls the tragedy that befell Woo-suk, feeling the weight of his past carelessness. The two soldiers tailing him attempt to catch Jun Ho on their own, eager to gain credit for capturing him, but Jun Ho successfully takes them both down. One of the soldiers warns Jun Ho about the overwhelming number of troops pursuing him. Despite this, as Jun Ho moves to a nearly empty train car, he skillfully fends off the mob of soldiers, disarming each one. Suddenly, Officer Min appears and ambushes Jun Ho. Just as Officer Min attempts to capture Jun Ho, Han arrives just in time to stop him. This allows Jun Ho to escape, though Officer Min, frustrated, turns on Han. He warns Sergeant Park, demanding that he be prepared to answer for these actions. Jun Ho manages to escape from the train, but Sung-woo soon finds him nearby. The two men engage in a physical confrontation, where Sung-woo ultimately overpowers Jun Ho, delivering a single blow that knocks him out. He then destroys the USB drive, eliminating the classified information. Hae-yeon, waiting for Jun Ho, tries to call him, but he doesn't answer. At the site, she finds the lighter that Woo-suk had once used to set his apartment on fire, accompanied by a note from Jun Ho, apologizing. Sung-woo takes Jun Ho hostage. He reflects on how Jun Ho has ruined his life since he was discharged from the military and returned, with the intent of destroying Jun Ho. In the same room, Officer Min attempts to fix the USB drive, only to discover that Jun Ho has already swapped it with a fake. Furious, Officer Min expresses his anger toward Jun Ho for wasting so much of their time. Meanwhile, Captain Yang reprimands Han, Sergeant Park, and Ji-young for their alliance with a deserter, emphasizing that they allowed him to escape. As a consequence, Captain Yang suspends Ji-young for siding with the DP team. In a bold move, Han decides to voluntarily discharge from the army to help locate Jun Ho. He has a private conversation with Captain Yang, urging him to reveal the corrupt actions of General Gu and Officer Min. Later, Han receives a summons to meet General Gu. During this meeting, Han threatens to expose a voice recording in which Captain Yang accuses General Gu and Officer Min of corruption. He demands that General Gu release Jun Ho and withdraw the arrest warrant if he wants the genuine USB drive returned, stating that Jun Ho's safety is his top priority. Officer Min reaches out to Sung-woo, urging him to release Jun Ho instead of taking him to military jail. As Sung-woo drives back to base camp, frustration mounting, Jun Ho manages to free himself from his handcuffs and attacks Sung-woo. The struggle causes the car to crash, leaving both men injured, but Jun Ho seizes the opportunity to escape while Sung-woo remains trapped inside the vehicle. Hae-yeon arrives at the military base hoping to meet Jun Ho but instead encounters Sergeant Park. During their conversation, they discuss Woo-suk's death, and Hae-yeon is stunned to learn the truth about her brother's experience in the military. Sergeant Park shares that Jun Ho blames himself for what happened to Woo-suk, a burden that has weighed heavily on him for the past year. As the two discuss potential ways to change the system, Hae-yeon becomes emotional, recalling the struggles her family has faced since Woo-suk's death. She questions Sergeant Park about the fairness of punishing Ruri, despite everything he is going through. That night, Jun Ho finds himself outside his home and speaks with his mother. She encourages him to reconnect with Sergeant Park and rejoin the military, but he assures her that he will return once he has finished his current mission. Jun Ho calls Sergeant Park and learns that Hae-yeon is with him. Meanwhile, Han visits the shop where the USB drive was repaired, inquiring about Jun Ho. Sergeant Park calls Han, asking him to locate Jun Ho. Before the first hearing of Ruri's trial, General Gu confronts So-eun with a threat. He asserts that there's nothing she can do to save Ruri since he won't testify in court. As public outrage against Ruri escalates, crowds demand his incarceration. Just then, Captain Lim arrives, promising to support So-eun in her fight. Once General Gu departs, Captain Lim advises So-eun to hold off until the USB drive is safely brought into the courtroom. The hearing begins, with General Gu and So-eun presenting their arguments. General Gu insists that the military is not to blame for the soldiers' deaths, claiming it is Ruri who should be held accountable. So-eun counters by stating that Ruri was tortured by his seniors, and military officials failed to notice this along with many other bullying incidents that led to soldiers' deaths. She recalls various cases that were dismissed, illustrating how the military aimed to sweep these issues under the rug. In response, General Gu attempts to portray Ruri negatively, accusing him of intentionally killing his friends. Meanwhile, Han finally tracks down Jun Ho and demands the USB drive from him. He tries to arrest Jun Ho, but Sung-woo unexpectedly intervenes. A fight ensues between Han and Jun Ho against Sung-woo. During this chaos, Officer Min follows Hae-yeon, hoping to uncover the true location of the USB drive. Sung-woo manages to beat Jun Ho but receives an apology from Jun Ho for his earlier carelessness. Eventually, Han knocks Sung-woo out and turns to Jun Ho. Both are exhausted from the fight, but Han is taken aback when Jun Ho confesses that he doesn't have the USB drive. Instead of calling Ruri to the stand, So-eun chooses to question Captain Lim. Captain Lim begins detailing the grim circumstances surrounding Byum's death, claiming that the soldier was left to suffer because higher-ups were too preoccupied to authorize a helicopter for his transport to the hospital. Captain Lim's powerful testimony resonates with the audience and judges, especially when he asserts that innocent lives are lost in the military, where young men come to serve their country. At that moment, Sergeant Park enters the courtroom with the USB drive, which So-eun presents to the judges. So-eun explains that the reports contained in the file hold confidential information and are the initial incident reports regarding the deaths. Sergeant Park also testifies in support of So-eun. In a flashback, Sergeant Park is seen talking to Jun Ho, asking him to keep Sung-woo and Officer Min occupied while he delivers the USB drive to court. The court case concludes with a ruling in favor of the victims, ordering that the military officers responsible for the deaths be incarcerated. The court also calls for additional evidence concerning other cases. Ruri offers his apologies to the victim's family as he is taken away to serve his sentence. Meanwhile, General Gu warns So-eun that she will have to pay for her actions. In a significant turn of events, Officer Min arrests Sergeant Park for leaking confidential information. Before his arrest, Jun Ho and Han meet Sergeant Park. The two DP members express their gratitude, sobbing as they thank their senior for taking responsibility for the situation. Later, Captain Lim, Jun Ho, and Han visit Sergeant Park in prison. Sergeant Park sends the boys away, wanting to speak to Captain Lim privately. He asks Captain Lim to look after the others, leading to a heartfelt exchange of gratitude between the two soldiers. As Han prepares to leave for Incheon, he bids farewell to Jun Ho. On his bus ride back, Jun Ho reflects on the next 364 days remaining until his discharge. During the journey, he spots Hwang on the street, now a college student, and both are surprised to see each other. The season ends with Sukbong catching up with Jun Ho at the military base camp after finally recovering. Initially shocked, Jun Ho is filled with joy at the sight of Sukbong, grateful to see that he has made it out alive.